Welcome to another thrilling werewolf shifter romance fantasy audiobook, The Fateful Encounter, written by Harub Mwanga. If you're new to our channel, we invite you to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to stay updated with our daily releases of captivating werewolf romance stories. And if you enjoy our content, don't forget to leave a like to show your support. For our loyal listeners, welcome back. We're excited to have you here again. Let's dive into another unforgettable tale. Chapter 1. Shadows of Two Worlds. The overhead fluorescent lights in the lab flickered ominously, as if they too were done with the day. I sympathized. I stretched my arms over my head, groaning dramatically. All right, lab rats, we've done our time. I say we overthrow the tyrannical reign of late-night research and flee into the world. My co-worker, Ian, barely glanced up from his microscope. You say that every night? Yes, but tonight, I mean it. I snapped my laptop shut, brushing away a few errant crumbs from my sad excuse for dinner. Half a granola bar and an untouched apple. Nutrition, thy name is regret. Outside the lab's glass doors, the city had begun its shift change. Offices dimmed while neon signs flickered to life, painting the streets in washes of electric blue and fiery red. People in expensive suits scurried toward the subway, their faces bathed in the glow of their phone screens. Somewhere in the distance, a busker played a jazzy tune on a saxophone, the notes floating through the crisp autumn air like smoke curling from a chimney. I loved this time of night. It was that perfect in-between moment, when the world wasn't quite done with the day but hadn't fully surrendered to the mystery of the night. A space where anything could happen. Well, anything except magic. Because magic didn't exist. Not in my world, anyway. I reached for my bag, my fingers brushing against the cool metal of my necklace, an old pendant that had been in my family for generations. It was a strange thing. Silver, with delicate engravings spiraling outward like a celestial map. A few people had asked if it meant something, and I always said no because I didn't know if it meant something. My mother had worn it, and her mother before that. And according to family legend, some long-lost ancestor had been given it by a mysterious stranger under a blood moon. Superstitious nonsense, obviously. Still, I never took it off. Earth to Avery! Ian's voice snapped me back to reality. He smirked, shoving his glasses up the bridge of his nose. You got that dreamy look again. Thinking about quitting and running off to Paris? I scoffed. Paris is overrated. They charge too much for coffee. I slung my bag over my shoulder and made for the exit, winking at Ian as I passed. Besides, the only mystery I need in my life is whether my landlord finally fixed the hot water. Stay safe, Morgan. I pushed through the doors, stepping into the evening air, my breath visible in little puffs. Safe. I liked safe. Safe meant predictable. Safe meant human, and I had every intention of keeping it that way, even if, as I turned the corner, my pendant hummed against my skin. Like a whisper I wasn't quite ready to hear. The forest breathed. Not in the poetic way humans like to imagine, with leaves swaying gently in the breeze and crickets singing some whimsical night melody. No, this was something older, something with weight. The trees stood too still. The wind had forgotten how to whisper, and the moonlight felt which meant trouble. I exhaled through my nose, adjusting the cuff of my leather jacket as I scanned the darkness between the trees. Tell me you feel that, I said, keeping my voice low. Feel what? Ezra, my second-in-command, stepped beside me, his boots crunching softly against the forest floor. You mean the ominous, doom-laden silence? No, boss, I feel nothing at all. Sarcasm. Fantastic. Spread out, I ordered, rolling my shoulders to fight off the itch crawling down my spine. Something's wrong. The rest of the pack wordlessly obeyed, fanning out in smooth, practiced movements. We weren't just any wolves. We were Blackwood wolves, a name that carried enough weight in the supernatural world to make lesser creatures reconsider their life choices. Ezra remained at my side because, of course he did. You think it's rogue activity? He asked, his voice all business now. No, I scanned the towering trees, looking for the thing that should be here but wasn't. It's something else. Something older. Ezra whistled low. You're going cryptic on me. That's never a good sign. I didn't answer, because at that moment I felt it again. A shift in the air, like a thread in reality had been tugged ever so slightly. Something ancient was stirring. Ezra must have felt it too, because his usual easygoing expression flattened into something serious. You ever get tired of being right? All the time. A branch snapped in the distance, and the entire pack tensed. My wolves weren't the kind that spooked easily. We were predators at the top of the food chain. But whatever lurked beyond those trees, it wasn't prey. And then, as if the night itself had a sense of dramatic timing, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves above us. I caught the scent of something familiar, but wrong, like a song played in the wrong key. Ezra inhaled sharply. Damon! I already knew. The prophecy. The fated mate prophecy. A cold weight settled in my gut. Not because I didn't believe in destiny, not because I feared whatever was coming, but because I did believe. And fate, she had a twisted sense of humor. Chapter 2, The Fateful Encounter. The universe had a sick sense of humor. One minute I was enjoying my post-work ritual, hot tea, fuzzy socks, and judging reality TV contestants from the comfort of my couch. The next, I was outside, in the cold, like some sleepwalking idiot drawn to an invisible siren song. I didn't remember deciding to leave my apartment. One second I was reaching for the remote, the next, I was standing at the edge of my street, staring down the darkened road that led toward the forest. Logic told me to turn around. Logic was smart. I, unfortunately, was not. The night air pressed against my skin, charged with something different. The usual city sounds, car engines, distant chatter, the occasional drunk guy singing off-key, had faded. Instead, there was silence. The kind that didn't just exist, but waited. I took a cautious step forward, then another. The streetlights flickered as if reconsidering their entire life choices. Great, now even technology was being dramatic. And then, I saw him, a figure emerging from the shadows of the tree line, moving with a predatory grace that sent every warning bell in my body shrieking. Tall, broad shoulders wrapped in a dark coat, hair so effortlessly tousled it should have been illegal. His entire presence screamed danger, but not the kind that made you run, the kind that made you want to lean in, just to see what would happen. My breath hitched, and like a total idiot, I just stood there. Then he looked at me, and my world tilted. I don't mean in the metaphorical, oh my God, he's hot kind of way, though, objectively, this was something else. A tug deep in my chest, an invisible thread, pulling me toward him like I was some helpless marionette and he was the puppeteer. What the hell? His eyes, an impossible shade of ice blue, locked onto mine, and for a split second, I swore the earth forgot how to spin. A gust of wind rushed between us, stirring my hair and carrying his scent. Cedar, smoke, something wild. I swallowed, hard. Okay, I muttered under my breath. This is fine, totally normal, just a completely random, devastatingly attractive man appearing out of the shadows near a creepy forest. Nothing suspicious about that at all. His lips quirked, like he'd heard me. Oh, great. Now I was hallucinating and embarrassing myself. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet? Useless. Every nerve in my body was caught in an invisible tug-of-war between get away and get closer. His gaze flicked to the pendant resting against my collarbone. Something unreadable flickered in his expression. Recognition? Shock? Then, before I could decide if I was more terrified or intrigued, he took a slow, deliberate step forward, and just like that, the universe, already on my last nerve, decided that now would be a fantastic time for my necklace to glow. Because of course it did. Run. That's what my brain said. That's what my instinct screamed. So naturally, my body decided to do the exact opposite and freeze like I was starring in my own personal horror movie. For one breathless moment, I stood there, staring at the glowing pendant against my chest like it had personally betrayed me. The guy, the ridiculously intense, probably dangerous, but why is he so attractive guy, took another step forward. Nope. I spun on my heel and bolted. Was it the best plan? No. Did I have a better one? Also no. My sneakers slapped against the pavement as I sprinted down the empty street, my pulse a wild drumbeat in my ears. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Fast footsteps. Of course, he was following me. Because why wouldn't the shadowy, 6-foot-something, possibly supernatural stranger give chase? I cut into an alleyway, weaving between dumpsters and forgotten bicycles, my breath coming in short bursts. The streetlights above flickered again, as if undecided on whether to help me or add to the whole creepy midnight escape vibe. Then it hit me. Not the guy, thank God, but a sudden bone-deep rush of something. Like static crackling under my skin, like 100 invisible threads pulling tight inside my chest, like a missing puzzle piece snapping into place and saying, "Hey, congrats, your life is officially not normal anymore." I stumbled, catching myself against a brick wall. My vision blurred for a second, flashes of something I shouldn't be seeing. A silver moon, massive and heavy in the sky. A dark forest stretching endlessly below. A heartbeat that wasn't mine, but felt like it belonged to me anyway. I gasped, shoving the images away. Nope. Nope. We were not doing this. Panic clawed at my ribs, my breath ragged as I pressed my palm against my pendant, trying to snuff out its unnatural glow. My entire body felt wired, like I was a radio that had just tuned into a frequency I didn't ask for. A shadow moved at the alley entrance. Done. The voice was low, commanding, and way too close. I whirled around. Him. Tall, broad-shouldered, unfairly good-looking him, blocking the only way out, his ice-colored eyes locked onto me, glowing faintly in the dim light. Okay, that wasn't normal. "Stay back," I snapped, pressing against the wall like I could sink into it. He didn't move, just stood there, watching me like I was some wild, skittish thing about to bolt. Which, to be fair, was exactly what I was. "Let me go." I tried again, my voice shaking just a little. "I don't know what this is, but I want nothing to do with it." His jaw tightened. "You have no idea what you are, do you?" I bristled. "Excuse you, I am a perfectly normal, very human woman who—" "Your pendant is glowing." I scowled, yanking my jacket over it. "Yeah, well, maybe it's defective." For some reason that made his mouth twitch, like he was trying very hard not to be amused, which was rude. I was in distress, and he was fighting a smirk? Absolutely unacceptable behavior. "Look," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, "whatever creepy werewolf cult you're part of," he exhaled sharply. "Not a cult." "I'm not interested." I took a slow step sideways, aiming for the narrow gap between a trash bin and the alley wall. His eyes flicked to the space instantly. Damn, he was way too observant. "Go home," he said, his voice lower this time. "Forget this happened." Forget? Forget? As if I was just supposed to ignore the fact that my necklace had turned into a freaking nightlight and that he, whoever he was standing there like some kind of dark fairy tale prince with a grudge? "Oh yeah," I said, voice laced with sarcasm. "I'll just add this to my weird midnight event scrapbook and move on with my life. Thanks for the helpful advice, ominous stranger." His mouth quirked again. Then, before I could question why his expression softened, just for a fraction of a second, I ran. This time, he didn't chase me. He just stood there, watching as I disappeared into the night. Chapter 3. Awakening. I slammed my apartment door shut behind me, locked it, then, just for good measure, shoved a chair under the doorknob like I was in a horror movie. I took 3 deep breaths, then another, because 3 didn't cut it. Okay, let's review. Mysterious, tall, broody stranger appears near a creepy forest. Said stranger looks at me like he knows me, which, spoiler alert, he does not. My pendant glows, which it has literally never done before. I get hit with some weird supernatural vision that makes no sense but feels way too real. Broody McShadowman tells me to forget it ever happened. Yeah, sure, I'll just forget that I'm possibly losing my mind, no problem. I groaned, kicking off my shoes and shuffling into the kitchen. My tiny apartment wasn't much. A 1-bedroom, a cluttered bookshelf, and a couch that had seen better days. But it was mine, and right now, that was the only comforting thing about this night. I yanked open the fridge, stared blankly at the contents, decided that eating anything would probably result in me choking on it and dying alone, so I closed it again. Besides, Mom loved it. It resulted in me dissolving into tears again when Mother cried. That's when I felt it, a strange thrumming in my chest, like my heartbeat had doubled, like it wasn't just my own anymore. I clutched the counter, sucking in a sharp breath. Nope, we are not doing this. My skin tingled, too warm, like an unseen current was moving under the surface. I yanked the pendant from under my sweater. It was still glowing, a faint silvery light that pulsed like it was breathing. A chill ran down my spine. I turned toward the mirror near the entryway, because surely this was just some weird lighting effect. Or maybe my apartment had a gas leak and I was slowly hallucinating. But the moment I saw my own reflection, my stomach dropped. Because for half a second, just half a second, I wasn't looking at myself. I was looking at something else. A woman's face, mine but not mine, stared back at me. Eyes too bright, like molten gold instead of hazel. Hair longer, wilder, like she'd been running through the woods for years. Then, blink, it was gone, just me again. Same messy ponytail, same dark circles from one too many late nights, same expression of mild existential dread. My hands were shaking. Okay, maybe this was fine. Maybe I was just really tired. Maybe my genetics had finally decided to betray me, and I was about to spontaneously develop some cool but totally normal human condition that involved hallucinations and jewelry-induced migraines. Or maybe, just maybe, something ancient had been waiting, and tonight it had finally woken up. The Blackwood wolves weren't known for being the friendly neighborhood pack kind of werewolves. No, we were the kind that people whispered about, the ones that legends warned against provoking, which made standing in the middle of the elders' council, explaining how I may have just found my fated mate, about as pleasant as getting punched in the jaw. No? Ezra rocked back on his heels, arms crossed, expression caught somewhere between amusement and disbelief. You're telling us your mate is a human? A muscle ticked in my jaw. That's what I said, isn't it? Silence. The kind that wasn't just silence, but judgmental silence. The kind that made wolves shift uncomfortably, casting wary glances at each other. Finally, Elder Callum Grizzled, sharp-aimed and older than sin, spoke. And you're certain? Unless my instincts decided to play a very cruel, deeply inconvenient joke on me, yes. More silence. Someone coughed, then chaos. This is a bad omen. One of the elders, a wiry man named Alaric, slammed his hand on the wooden table. Humans don't belong in the prophecy. She's not just human, Ezra cut in, shooting me a look. Her pendant reacted. Callum's gaze sharpened. The pendant? I gritted my teeth. I didn't like the way he said it, like it meant something more. Alaric scoffed. That doesn't mean anything. It could be a fluke. A fluke? I repeated flatly. Shh. And while we're at it, let's pretend the wind just happened to shift the second I laid eyes on her, and that my wolf didn't nearly tear out of my skin trying to... I cut myself off, fists clenching. I wasn't about to say it, admit that for one brief, terrifying second, my instincts had screamed at me to claim her. Ezra's gaze flickered toward me knowingly, but he thankfully, didn't say anything. Callum studied me for a long moment, his gnarled fingers tapping against the wooden table. "If the prophecy has chosen her, there's no avoiding it," Alaric scoffed. "Or it's a mistake." "Prophecy doesn't make mistakes," another elder muttered. "Oh, please," Alaric turned, leveling a glare at me. "And what happens if she rejects the bond? If she fears us? If this prophecy leads us straight into a war we don't need?" I forced my expression to stay neutral, but a thread of unease coiled in my gut, because he wasn't wrong. If this girl, Avery, knew what she was, what I was, what this bond meant, she'd probably run like hell. "She's mine." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Steady. Final. Callum's gaze lingered on me, unreadable. Ezra exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "Well, this is going to be fun." "Oh yeah, so much fun." Chapter 4. The Forbidden Alliance. The bookstore smelled like old paper, incense, and just a hint of poor life choices. It was one of those places you didn't find unless it wanted to be found. Hidden between a vape shop and a tax service, with neon "We Fix Audits" flashing in the window, the entrance was blink and you'll miss it narrow. A tarnished brass sign above the door read "The Hollow Quill," and the windows were cluttered with books so ancient they probably had opinions on the fall of Rome. I hesitated outside. This was crazy, right? Normal people didn't walk into shady bookstores in search of answers about their possibly cursed, definitely glowing jewelry. Then again, normal people also didn't have supernatural panic attacks in alleyways. With a sigh, I shoved the door open. A bell jingled above my head. One of those tiny, polite ding sounds that felt at odds with the absolute chaos inside. Bookshelves towered dangerously close to collapse, stacked with texts ranging from "How to Ward Off Malevolent Spirits in 3 Easy Steps" to "Vampire Tax Laws and You." A taxidermy raven, missing one glass eye, perched above the register like it was judging my life choices. And behind the counter, a woman who looked like she took nonsense from exactly no one. Dark brown skin, high cheekbones, and a piercing gaze that flicked to me the moment I entered. Her tightly coiled black hair was tied up in a wrap, and she had the general vibe of someone who could summon lightning if you annoyed her enough. This was Evelyn, and according to the internet, which was never wrong, obviously, she was the best source of supernatural information that didn't involve selling your soul. Her eyes flicked to my pendant immediately. Hey? What? What did mean? I cleared my throat, gripping the strap of my bag. Hi, No refunds. I blinked. I didn't buy anything. She arched a brow. You're about to. Okay, not ominous at all. I hesitated, debating whether I should just cut to the chase or ease into it with small talk. But considering my necklace was still faintly pulsing like a tiny supernatural heartbeat, time was probably not on my side. I need answers, I said, stepping closer. About this. I tapped the pendant. Evelyn's expression didn't change. And what makes you think I have them? I don't. I tilted my head. But I do know you specialize in the weird, and, well, I gestured vaguely at my own existence. I'm having a very weird week. That earned me a slow, considering stare. Then, to my utter horror, she smirked. Let me guess, she drawled. It's a spurious glowing object. Unexplained physical symptoms. Weird dreams? Maybe a cryptic, brooding stranger lurking in the background? I opened my mouth, closed it, narrowed my eyes. How do you know that? She shrugged, stepping out from behind the counter and weaving through the maze of bookshelves. Lucky guess? Or maybe I've seen this exact scenario play out before. I frowned. So, I'm not crazy? You're absolutely crazy. She plucked a thick, leather-bound book from a shelf and tossed it onto a nearby table. But that's not the main problem, is it? I exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through my hair. You know what this is, don't you? Evelyn met my gaze, all amusement gone. I know it's dangerous. My stomach dipped. She turned the book toward me, tapping a page, filled with ancient script and an illustration of something that looked alarmingly familiar. This symbol, she said, pointing. It's not just decoration. It's a mark, a claim. I swallowed hard. A claim? By what? Evelyn's gaze darkened. By something very, very old. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. Like she wasn't just giving me a warning, like she was speaking from experience. And suddenly, I had a very bad feeling that my life had just gotten a whole lot more complicated. I had expected the back room of the Hollow Quill to be, well, a room. Maybe a cluttered office with some messy paperwork, a cup of half-drunk tea, and a cat sleeping in a pile of dust. What I had not expected was a literal treasure trove of supernatural chaos. Shelves lined the walls, filled with ancient-looking manuscripts, glass jars containing things I didn't want to identify, and one particularly aggressive-looking skull perched ominously on a wooden crate. A massive circular table sat in the center, covered in parchment, half-melted candles, and what looked suspiciously like a cursed compass. Okay, I muttered, stepping inside. This is definitely where people get hexed. Evelyn snorted. Relax, newbie. No one's hexing you. Yet. Comforting. She moved toward the table and unrolled a massive piece of parchment, revealing intricate symbols in faded ink that looked at least a few centuries past its expiration date. I squinted. Let me guess. That's a totally normal document and not, say, a cursed contract binding me to an immortal entity? Evelyn smirked. Not quite, but you're warm, not comforting either. I folded my arms, watching as she pointed to a circular emblem on the parchment, one that looked alarmingly similar to the symbol engraved on my pendant. This, she said, is an ancient clay mark. It's been used in supernatural circles for centuries, and it's not random. I exhaled slowly. Okay, humor me. What does it mean? Evelyn leaned against the table, tapping the page. It means someone or something staked a claim on your bloodline long before you were even born. I blinked. I'm sorry, my what? She gestured around us, her tone patient, like she was explaining basic algebra to a very slow student. You're not just some random human who accidentally wandered into the supernatural world. You were meant to be here. The bond, the pendant, She waved a hand at my entire existence. Whole glowing jewelry, weird visions, mysterious broody man thing. It's not new. It's history repeating itself. I stared at her. You're telling me my family has been... what? Secretly tied to the supernatural for generations? Evelyn lifted a brow. It'd explain a lot, wouldn't it? I opened my mouth to argue. Closed it. Scowled. Because, annoyingly, she was not wrong. It would explain why my mother never took the pendant off, why she always seemed oddly aware of things most people ignored. Shadows moving when they shouldn't. The way the air shifted just before a storm. The feeling that something was watching even when nothing was there. And it would explain why I was currently standing in the back room of a mystical black market library, being told that my entire bloodline was probably cursed. I ran a hand through my hair. Okay, fine. Let's say I believe you. Evelyn's lips twitched. That was fast. I threw my hands up. What do you want me to say? No, that sounds ridiculous. While my necklace literally pulses with supernatural energy, I might not have a PhD in weird, but I can put two and two together. Evelyn grinned. Glad to see you're catching up. I sighed, rubbing my temples. So what now? Evelyn's gaze flickered to the pendant at my throat. Now, we figure out who's been waiting for you. A chill rolled down my spine, because something in the way she said it made me very, very sure. They weren't waiting for me. They were coming. Chapter 5. Rising Shadows. The underground hall reeked of power and bad intentions. Not in the obvious way. There were no dramatic storm clouds or ominous thunderclaps, though honestly it wouldn't have felt out of place. But the air was thick, charged with a kind of energy that made the skin prickle, like the space itself had teeth. And at the center of it all, Ravenna sat at the head of a long decadent table, one hand curled around the stem of a silver goblet, the other resting lazily on the armrest of a throne-like chair she'd absolutely stolen from some forgotten monarch. Her presence was all wrong, the kind that made even the most powerful creatures in the room shift uncomfortably, as if their instincts were screaming, "Run, run, run!" She liked that. The candlelight flickered against her impossibly pale skin, casting sharp shadows over high cheekbones and cold, calculating gray eyes. Her black silk gown draped around her like a spill of ink, pooling at her feet in elegant, thoroughly unnecessary drama. But that was the thing about Ravenna. She loved unnecessary drama. She swirled the wine in her goblet, not because she intended to drink it, but because she enjoyed the effect, the pause before the inevitable bad news. Across from her, a wiry man with sallow skin and a permanently haunted expression shifted nervously. "The bond has formed," he muttered. Ravenna smiled, sharp, knowing, dangerous. "Has it now?" "Blackwood found her," another voice chimed in, belonging to a woman with striking, unnaturally green eyes. "The human." "Human," Ravenna repeated, rolling the word across her tongue like a wine she wasn't sure she liked. "What a delightful inconvenience." A scoff came from the shadows. A tall, scarred man leaned against a pillar, arms crossed, gaze filled with thinly veiled disdain. "Inconvenience. This is an opportunity." "Blackwood is vulnerable." Ravenna's fingers tapped idly against the rim of her goblet, her expression unreadable. They weren't wrong. A fated bond was powerful, dangerous in the right hands, but catastrophic in the wrong ones. And if one half of that bond had no idea what she was... Oh, that was deliciously messy. Ravenna leaned forward slightly, her silver rings glinting in the candlelight. "And how exactly do you suggest we use this little development?" The scarred man smirked. "The girl is his weakness. If we separate them before she understands the bond, before she's fully connected to him, the effects will be devastating." A slow, wicked smile curled at Ravenna's lips. "Oh, I do love devastation." The woman with green eyes hesitated. "There's still the matter of her lineage. If she's truly tied to the old blood, there could be complications." Ravenna waved a hand dismissively. "Complications make things interesting." The scarred man stepped forward, his grin predatory. "Then let's make things very interesting." Ravenna lifted her goblet in a lazy toast. To chaos, to war, to tearing fate apart, piece by piece. The forest stretched around me, vast and endless, bathed in silver light. Moonlight pooled in the clearing, catching the frost-kissed grass, making the night feel suspended, paused, in some ancient waiting breath. The kind of night where the air was too still, too charged, like the world was holding its breath before something shifted. Much like me, I exhaled, running a hand through my hair, exhaustion curling at my edges. The pack was restless. Ezra had made his concerns clear, the elders weren't pleased, and Alaric, predictably, had spent the better half of the evening pacing and muttering about how a human mate would be the ruin of us all. And maybe, just maybe, I agreed with him. I wasn't supposed to feel this pull, this all-consuming bone-deep certainty that she was mine. Avery Morgan, a human, my mate. The one thing I wasn't prepared for. I clenched my jaw, tilting my head toward the night sky, where the moon hung heavy, round, and far too knowing. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. I had spent my life preparing to lead this pack, to uphold the ancient traditions, to protect my people, to carry the weight of duty without faltering. And now? Now, fate had decided to drop a human into my lap, stare me in the face and say, "Handle it." Handle it, like it was some simple thing. Like she wasn't already under my skin, tangled in my instincts, in my thoughts, like she wasn't already making me question everything. I closed my eyes, inhaling the crisp night air, the scent of pine, earth, and something deeper. The pack. They were watching me, even if they weren't here, their loyalty, their trust. It was a presence, a weight that never left my shoulders. They needed a leader. Not a man torn between his duty and his fate, not a wolf at war with his own instincts, not someone foolish enough to— A snap of a branch in the distance. My muscles tensed, my wolf just beneath the surface, listening, waiting. But the wind shifted, carrying only familiar scents. Ezra, of course. "You gonna keep brooding all night?" His voice drifted through the trees before his figure emerged from the shadows, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I huffed out a humorless laugh. "Apparently." Ezra tilted his head, studying me. Then, after a beat, "You're thinking about her?" I didn't answer. "Didn't need to," he sighed, stepping closer, the moonlight catching the knowing smirk playing at his lips. "You know, I think I actually prefer you when you're growling at things." I shot him a look. Ezra shrugged. "Look, I get it. This is complicated." Understatement. "But she's yours, Damon." His voice was softer now. "Whether you like it or not." I clenched my jaw. "I never said I didn't like it." Ezra's smirk widened. "Oh, I know." I rolled my eyes and turned away, letting the silence settle between us. The weight of the night pressed against my skin, the moon watching. Always watching. Finally, Ezra exhaled, stretching his arms above his head. "Well, whenever you're done having an existential crisis out here, the pack's waiting." I didn't move, didn't speak. Because I knew that when I left this clearing, when I returned to them, I'd have to make a choice between the man they expected me to be and the wolf that had already decided. And no matter what I chose, the bond wouldn't care. Fate never did. Chapter 6. Confronting the bond. My apartment was haunted, not by ghosts, I hoped, but by whatever the hell was happening to me. I paced across the small space, arms crossed, jaw tight, ignoring the way my pendant would not stop glowing, like it had delusions of being a full-time nightlight. "No," I muttered, jabbing a finger at it like I could scold it into submission. "We are not doing this. I refuse." The pendant pulsed once, as if mocking me. "Rude." I blew out a breath and flopped onto my couch, rubbing my temples. This was fine, totally fine. People had unexplained glowy jewelry incidents all the time, right? Probably, somewhere. The moonlight outside spilled through my window, silver and too bright, making the room feel charged, like the air before a storm. Then, the shift happened. A sudden, gut-wrenching pull in my chest, like something had grabbed me from the inside and tugged. My breath hitched, the pendant flared, and a wave of heat rolled over my skin, leaving behind a tingling sensation that wasn't quite pain, but wasn't comfortable either. I stumbled to my feet. No, not now. My reflection in the dark window caught my attention, and that's when I saw it. My eyes wrong. Too bright. Almost glowing, the hazel flecked with gold. My breathing turned uneven, my limbs aching, my skin feeling too tight like I was stretching into something not quite human. Oh, hell no, this was not happening. I gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. "I am not transforming in my tiny overpriced apartment. Do you hear me, universe?" No response. Of course. A sharp, unfamiliar sensation rippled through me, a presence brushing against the edges of my mind, something ancient and unknowable but familiar. Like a forgotten melody I almost recognized. And worse? Worse was the tether, the invisible, undeniable thread pulling me towards something. Or someone. My stomach clenched, because I knew what it was pulling me toward. I clenched my teeth. Damon. As if saying his name made it worse, a new surge of heat rolled through me and I gasped, clutching at my chest. My heartbeat wasn't just mine anymore. It was his, too. Panic clawed at my ribs. No. I shook my head, backing up until I hit the wall, trying to breathe past the sensation of not being alone inside my own body. This isn't real. Another wave of heat, longing, need. My knees nearly buckled. This was his fault, his stupid supernatural connection, his stupid unreadable gaze, his stupid fate-bound destiny nonsense. I wasn't supposed to feel like this. I wasn't supposed to want. A knock at the door, loud, insistent. I sucked in a sharp breath. I already knew who it was, and I wasn't ready for what would happen if I opened that door. The forest was unreasonably dramatic at night. The stars were too bright, the moon was too big, and the trees? They absolutely knew something I didn't, which, frankly, was rude. I huffed, shifting on the mossy log I'd claimed as my temporary research station. In front of me, my phone screen glowed with a very unhelpful search result. Bond. 1 to seek professional help, exorcist, witch, or morally flexible wizard. Fantastic, because wizards were just hanging around waiting to fix my deeply inconvenient life choices. I groaned and flopped onto my back, staring up at the sky. I am not built for this. The pull in my chest, that stupid, invisible tether, had been relentless all day, like a soft but insistent whisper pressing against the edges of my mind. Damon. I hated how his name felt like a gravity well, pulling me in, whether I wanted it or not. And worse, I did want it. I shut my eyes. Nope. Nope. We were not thinking about that. A twig snapped in the distance. I shot up so fast I nearly fell off my log. Oh, come on, I muttered, already knowing exactly who it was before he even stepped into view. Because of course, he was here. Damon emerged from the shadows, moving with that annoyingly effortless, predatory grace, like he wasn't even trying. The moonlight hit his ridiculous cheekbones in a way that was honestly unfair, and his ice moonlight eyes locked onto mine with far too much intensity. His voice was quiet. "You're avoiding me," I scoffed. Wow, what gave it away, the fact that I ran? Or the fact that I'm currently Googling how to unsubscribe from Fate? A muscle ticked in his jaw. He stepped closer. I stepped back. He exhaled through his nose. "Avery?" "Nope." I held up a hand. "We're not doing this. Avery?" His tone lowered, the kind that made my stomach flip in ways I did not appreciate. "You can't run from this." I threw my arms up. "I can try." Damon closed the space between us in a heartbeat, and suddenly the world felt too small, the night too charged, my lungs too tight. "This bond—" He exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. "It's not a curse, Avery." I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh yeah? Tell that to my glowing jewelry and my severely compromised autonomy." He held my gaze, steady, unshaken. "Tell that to the pack, to the war that's coming, to Ravenna?" My breath hitched, because there it was, the real reason he was here. Not to comfort me, not to ease this impossible pull, but because I was a pawn in a bigger game. I swallowed hard. "So that's it then? You want me to just—" "What? Accept this? Accept that my life doesn't belong to me anymore?" Damon's expression tightened. "That's not what I—" "Then what, Damon?" I snapped. "What do you want from me?" He hesitated, and for the first time I saw it, the war inside him, not just duty, not just instinct, something softer, something raw, something that looked a hell of a lot like longing. His throat bobbed. I need you to trust me." My heart lurched. Because he meant it. Because this wasn't just about the bond anymore. It was about us. The night hummed around us, the wind carrying secrets, the stars holding their breath. Damon exhaled. We're stronger together, you know that. I clenched my jaw, fighting the pull, fighting the way my soul already knew he was right. Because I wasn't ready for this. But fate didn't care, and neither did he. Chapter 7. The Hidden Legacy. The estate should have been abandoned. It looked abandoned. The towering iron gates sagged, rust gnawing at the metal like time itself had decided to chew on them. Beyond the entrance, the house, mansion, fortress, haunted relic of questionable decision-making, loomed against the storm-heavy sky, its once grand stone walls crumbling under layers of ivy. I tilted my head. This is either the setting of my imminent murder or the start of my villain origin story. Damon, standing beside me with his usual brooding, arms crossed like he's posing for a Werewolf magazine cover stance, didn't even blink. It's your family home. I blinked back. You're kidding. Not even a little. A gust of wind pushed through the trees, rattling branches against the iron gates like they had opinions. I exhaled, rubbing my temples. Right, of course. Because why wouldn't I randomly inherit a creepy old estate in the middle of nowhere? I threw my hands up. This is totally normal. Happens to people all the time. Damon smirked. Sarcasm won't make it disappear. I narrowed my eyes at him. No, but denial might. He huffed out a laugh. Barely, but I heard it. Before nodding toward the gates, come on, we need to get inside. I followed, grumbling under my breath as I shoved open the gate, wincing at the creak that sounded suspiciously like a horror movie sound effect. The path leading to the front doors was overgrown, the cobblestones cracked, weeds pushing through like nature was reclaiming what my ancestors had abandoned. Ancestors. The word felt weird. Like trying on a coat that didn't quite fit. Because until 24 hours ago, my biggest familial mystery was why Aunt Linda always left voicemails instead of texting like a normal person. Not, hey, surprise, your family has deep supernatural ties and also here's a spooky mansion, enjoy. We reached the massive wooden doors, and Damon gave me a pointed look. Keys? I blinked. You assume I have keys. He sighed, then, with zero hesitation, pushed the doors open with one strong shove. The wood groaned, the hinges giving way like they recognized him. I crossed my arms. Oh, cool. So you're just stronger than doors now. That's great. Love that for you. Damon ignored me, stepping inside first. Stay close. I rolled my eyes but followed him into the dimly lit foyer, immediately regretting it when the dust attacked my entire face. I coughed. Yep. Love inheriting a mansion that actively tries to kill me with air quality violations. The inside was exactly what I feared. Dark, cavernous, and filled with the kind of ornate furniture that looked like it had seen things. Massive chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their crystals covered in dust. A grand staircase curved up into shadows, its railing carved with intricate symbols I didn't recognize. My fingers traced the patterns absently. Something about them felt familiar. Damon watched me. Recognize it? I shook my head. I don't know. Maybe. Because that was the problem. I didn't remember anything about this place, but something in me did. A soft glow caught my eye. Not a lamp, not the moonlight. Something else. I followed the faint shimmer to a massive bookshelf along the far wall. Nestled between two ancient-looking tomes was a small silver crest. The same symbol as my pendant. I hesitated. Then, before my common sense could yell at me, I pulled the crest. With a low click, the bookshelf shuddered, then swung inward, revealing a hidden chamber beyond it. I turned to Damon, wide-eyed. Okay. This just got cool, he exhaled, shaking his head. You have a very skewed definition of cool. Ignoring him, I stepped inside. The chamber was small, lined with old books, relics, and most notably, several leather-bound diaries stacked neatly on a wooden table. Dust covered everything, but the moment I reached for one, I felt it. A pull, a memory that wasn't mine. Flash, a woman standing where I stood now, her hair loose around her shoulders, her expression set with determination. "We must protect the balance," she whispered. "The Blackwood wolves need us. The bond must endure." Flash, a man golden-eyed like mine, holding out the very pendant that now rested against my chest. "This will keep our bloodlines safe," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You must never remove it." Flash, a battlefield, wolves, fire, magic splitting the sky. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stumbled back, sucking in a sharp breath. Damon was beside me instantly. "Avery?" I shook my head, pressing a hand to my forehead. I saw them. My ancestors." I swallowed. "They knew the Blackwood wolves. They fought for them, with them." Damon's expression was unreadable. "You were never meant to be separate from this." I looked down at the diaries. My fingers traced the gold lettering on the nearest one. The name engraved there sent a fresh wave of dread and familiarity curling in my stomach. Eleanor Morgan. My great-great-something grandmother, and the last recorded guardian of the supernatural balance. I exhaled shakily. Well, I muttered. Guess that explains why fate won't leave me alone." Damon huffed a quiet laugh. "I could have told you that." I shot him a look. "Next time maybe tell me before the supernatural visions start." He smirked, but his eyes softened. "Would you have believed me?" I hesitated. No, I wouldn't have. But now, I didn't have a choice. Because this was my legacy. And something told me I was about to find out exactly why fate had been waiting for me. The storm outside had opinions. Lightning flashed through the estate's broken windows, illuminating the dusty ancient chamber like some divine special effects team had been hired to make this moment extra dramatic. Thunder rumbled overhead, deep and unrelenting, rattling the very foundation of my newly inherited problem mansion. Because of course I would be dealing with an identity crisis during a Gothic-level storm. "Okay," I muttered, pacing between relic-covered tables. "Let's review. I am apparently not just a human, but a legacy guardian of the supernatural balance, whatever that means. My great-great-something grandmother was tied to the Blackwood wolves, which, surprise, also means my fate is wrapped up in theirs. And, to top it all off, I yanked my pendant from beneath my sweater. It pulsed softly, alive, its glow syncing with the rhythm of my heartbeat. I scowled at it. This thing is ruining my life. Damon, leaning against a stone pillar, arms firmly crossed in his signature brooding stance, exhaled through his nose. "You're being dramatic." "Oh, I'm sorry," I snapped. "Did your jewelry suddenly decide it was sentient and hijack your destiny?" He smirked. "No, but I do turn into a wolf, so." I narrowed my eyes. "Not the flex you think it is, buddy." He shrugged, completely unbothered, which only irritated me more. I turned back to the pendant, lifting it up so it caught the flickering candlelight. It was beautiful, I'd admit. The silver engravings curled outward like celestial constellations, the center stone pulsing with an eerie, almost breathing glow. It wasn't just a necklace. It never had been. A gust of wind slammed against the stained glass windows, rattling the walls. Something shifted inside me. Deep, intrinsic, old. I suddenly felt too small for my own skin, like I was expanding, stretching into something I didn't fully understand. I swallowed hard. What if I don't want this? Damon was quiet for a beat. Then, softer than before, he said, "What if you do?" I turned to him, scowling by default, but there was something in his gaze, something I couldn't dismiss as simple pack duty or fated mate obligation, something real. "You were never meant to be ordinary, Avery," he said, stepping closer. "You know that." I hated that he was right. I hated that a part of me had always known, had always felt that I didn't quite fit into the normal, human world, that there was something just beneath the surface of reality, something waiting for me to see it. And now I couldn't unsee it. Thunder cracked, shaking the walls, and suddenly the pendant flared, bright, blinding, its light spilling over my skin, sinking into my veins. I gasped, stumbling back, but Damon caught my wrist, steady, grounding. "Avery." His voice was firm, anchoring. I clutched the pendant, heart pounding, feeling power unfurl inside me like an ancient sleeping beast stretching after a long hibernation. And then I accepted it. I didn't fight the pull. I didn't reject the truth. I let the light sink in, merge, become part of me. The glow settled into a soft hum against my chest. No longer fighting, no longer forcing itself to be seen, because it didn't have to. I wasn't running anymore. Damon studied me, his grip on my wrist loosening slightly, but his eyes never leaving mine. Something shifted between us. "You okay?" he asked, voice lower now. I took a breath, then another. Then I smirked. "So, do I get a cool title now, like Celestial Guardian of the Moon Wolves or something?" Damon huffed out a laugh, shaking his head. "Gods help us all," but his lips twitched. Like he was relieved. Like he knew I had finally chosen this, and there was no turning back. Chapter 8. Betrayals and Fractures. The Werewolf Pack's council chamber looked exactly like what you'd expect from an ancient secret society of supernatural beings. A cavernous stone hall, torches flickering ominously, and a heavy sense of old magic pressing down like a warning. Honestly, a little dramatic, but considering the mood in the room, fitting. I stood near the entrance, arms crossed, as Damon took his place at the long, curved table at the center of the chamber. The elders, a collection of wolves so old and powerful they made Damon look like a reckless teenager, were already seated, watching, waiting. Ezra, Damon's second-in-command and usual provider of dry sarcasm, looked uncharacteristically tense, which was never a good sign. Alaric, the elder who had made it painfully clear he was not a fan of my existence, leaned forward, his voice a growl. "You should have told us sooner, Blackwood." Damon's jaw tightened. "I needed proof." "Well," Ezra muttered, rubbing his temple, "congrats, you got proof. Wish it wasn't such a colossal disaster." That caught my attention. "Oh, fantastic," I said, stepping forward. "So we've moved on from vague, ominous meetings to actual disasters. Love that. Super fun." Ezra shot me a "you're not helping" look. Damon, however, didn't flinch. "It's Julian." The chamber stilled. I frowned. "Julian? As in the guy who helped patch me up after my last supernatural meltdown?" "The same," Damon said tightly. "That wasn't great." Julian was one of the trusted ones. One of the wolves who had stood by Damon for years. He wasn't as cocky as Ezra or as openly grumpy as Alaric, but he was steady, reliable, the kind of wolf who wouldn't betray his own unless he'd been manipulated. I inhaled sharply. "Ravina," Damon nodded, eyes like ice and steel. A murmur spread across the chamber, voices low and uncertain. Ezra exhaled sharply. "We don't know how deep it bows. Julian swears he didn't mean to betray us, that it was an influence." He hesitated, then added grimly, "A blood spell." My stomach dropped. Magic that twisted your will wasn't just dangerous, it was cruel. Alaric slammed a hand against the table. "And he's compromised. You know what that means." Damon's entire body tensed, but he said nothing. "Oh no. Oh, absolutely not." "Hold on," I cut in, stepping forward. "You're not seriously suggesting—" "Death," Alaric said bluntly, as if it were that simple. "We can't risk him turning on us again." "Jesus," I muttered, running a hand through my hair. "You guys ever consider therapy?" Ezra coughed, clearly hiding a laugh. Damon, however, didn't react. His expression was stone, but I could see it, the war in his eyes. He didn't want to kill Julian, but he also knew what was at stake. I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice. "Damon, he's your friend." Damon's jaw ticked. Alaric scoffed. "This is exactly why the mate bond is a liability." A hush fell over the room. I narrowed my eyes. "Excuse me?" Alaric leaned back in his chair, smug. "You think we don't see it?" Blackwood hesitates. Now. He questions himself. "Because of you." He gestured vaguely in my direction, like I was some bad decision Damon had accidentally picked up at a garage sale. "This bond makes him weak," Damon growled, low and dangerous. "Or," I said sweetly, stepping forward with a smile that was absolutely fake, "it makes him stronger because he actually gives a damn." Alaric scowled. "Emotion is a weakness." I tilted my head. "Wow, what a fun way to live," Damon sighed. "Avery," I turned to him. "No, seriously, do you guys just suppress all feelings until you explode? Is there like a pack-sponsored rage therapy session? Because you clearly need one." Ezra muttered. "I would actually pay to see that." Alaric slammed his fist on the table again, looking ready to shift and maul me on principle. "Enough," Damon exhaled slowly, turning back to the council. "Julian will be confined, not killed." His voice left zero room for argument. "We figure out exactly what Ravenna did to him, and we fix it." Alaric scowled but didn't argue. The tension in the room did not ease, though, because everyone knew this wasn't just about Julian. This was about what came next. And the fractures forming in the pack were only getting bigger. Moonlight dripped through the trees, turning the clearing into something otherworldly. Too still, too expectant. I didn't like it. Everything in me itched, a crawling, unsettled feeling coiling in my gut, like I'd just walked into the part of a horror movie where the audience screams, "Don't go in there, you idiot!" But naturally, here I was, the idiot. Damon moved beside me, silent and sharp, his presence as steady as my pulse was not. "You sure about this?" I muttered. "No." "Great, fantastic, love that for us." Julian, the trusted pack member turned accidental traitor, stood in the center of the clearing, his face drawn, his stance uneasy. He looked like a man being crushed between guilt and duty. And in front of him, a circle. Not just any circle, a supernatural one, carved into the earth with precision, lined with symbols that made my pendant burn against my skin. I didn't need a PhD in, "Oh no, this is a terrible idea," to recognize a ritual meant to sever something. And considering that Damon and I had been dealing with a fated mate situation we didn't exactly sign up for, I had a very bad feeling about what that meant. I crossed my arms. "So, just to be super clear, this isn't a let's have a fun bonding experience in the moonlight ritual, right? This is a stab your magical soulmate connection in the face kind of thing." Julian winced. Which, honestly, rude. If you're gonna betray someone, at least own it. Damon's voice was low and cold. "Who told you how to do this?" Julian exhaled, looking physically sick. "I don't know." My eyebrows shot up. "Oh, cool. So you just stumbled across a spell that conveniently severs fated mate bonds? Maybe in the clearance section of Evil Rituals Are Us?" His jaw clenched. "I didn't." He exhaled sharply. "I thought I was protecting the pack." Damon stilled, but his silence was a thunderstorm waiting to happen. I wasn't so patient. "Protecting them from what exactly?" I snapped. "From me?" Julian didn't answer, didn't have to, because we both knew it wasn't just me. It was the bond, the thing that tied me to Damon, the thing that made the pack nervous, the thing Ravenna could exploit, the thing Julian, for all his guilt and hesitation, was still willing to destroy. My pulse spiked. The air inside the clearing shifted. And that's when I felt it. A pull, a sharp, painful yank inside my chest, like something had reached inside me and started unraveling threads I hadn't even realized were woven there. I stumbled back. What? Damon moved instantly, catching my wrist. It's starting. No. Nope. Absolutely not. Julian's hands trembled over the symbols in the dirt, his mouth moving in an incantation that didn't sound human, and my soul screamed. A cold, burning force ripped through me, tearing at something I couldn't see, but could feel, like an invisible rope snapping strand by strand. Pain shot through my ribs. My knees buckled. Damon's grip tightened. Avery. I barely heard him, because the world was splitting apart. The air crackled. The pendant at my throat blazed, throwing off sparks of silver-white light. A wind I couldn't explain whipped through the clearing, swirling the ritual circle, disrupting the symbols. And then, the ground exploded. A blast of raw, unchecked magic detonated outward, sending Julian flying, shattering trees, knocking Damon and me off our feet. I hit the ground hard, winded, disoriented, furious, because the bond? It was still there. Beaten, battered, but unbroken. Damon was already on his feet, eyes glowing bright, feral blue, his wolf clawing its way to the surface. His breathing was ragged, his stance all protect, protect, protect. Julian, flat on his back, dazed, probably rethinking all his life choices, groaned. The clearing felt wrong. The air, the energy, the magic itself, it had recoiled from what Julian tried to do. Like some ancient force had slapped his hands away and said, "Nope, not today." Damon's voice was deadly quiet. You tried to tear apart something you didn't understand. Julian, still gasping, turned his head slightly. It didn't work. Damon's expression was stone and fire. No, Julian swallowed. Then, what did it do? The wind whispered through the trees. A sick weight settled in my chest. Because whatever had just happened, whatever had fought back against that spell, something else had felt it too. Something watching. Something waiting. I pushed myself up, still breathless, and for the first time I wasn't afraid of the bond, because I had a feeling we were going to need it. Chapter 9. Eclipse of Fate. The sky bled red, not in the end-of-the-world actual sky stripping kind of way, but close. The lunar eclipse had begun, staining the clearing in a deep, unnatural twilight. Shadows stretched too far, curling at the edges like they were alive, and the air buzzed with something ancient, something waiting. I tightened my grip on my pendant, feeling the heat of its magic thrumming against my palm. "Tell me this isn't a bad idea," I muttered. Damon, standing beside me with all the calm intensity of a predator preparing for a kill, didn't look over. "It's a terrible idea." I sighed. "Great. Just checking." The forest behind us whispered, full of unseen eyes. The pack was waiting, wolves hidden among the trees, watching, waiting. Damon's presence beside me was steady, an anchor against the storm about to break. Then, the wind shifted, and I felt her. A slow, deliberate chill spread through the clearing, a presence pressing down on my bones, as if the world itself recoiled at her arrival. Ravina stepped forward, her silhouette sharp and elegant, her black gown moving like ink spilled across the earth. She smiled, like she'd already won. "Ah," she said smoothly, voice curling like smoke. "So this is where fate has led us." I swallowed the instinctual, "Nope, no thanks, let's leave" reaction, bubbling in my throat. Instead, I tilted my head. "You know, for someone who's all about power and immortality, you really love dramatic entrances." Ravenna's silver-gray eyes gleamed, amusement flickering behind them. "And you love pretending you're not terrified?" I stiffened. Damon stepped closer, his body a wall of heat and tension beside me. "Enough." His voice was low, dangerous. "You wanted to face us? You have us." Ravenna sighed, almost lazily, her gaze flicking to me. "You should have broken the bond while you had the chance, little heir." I forced a smirk. "Yeah, well, turns out I have commitment issues." Something shifted in the air. A snap of energy, an invisible line being drawn. This was it. No more running. Damon's fingers brushed mine, just for a second, just enough to send a rush of heat through my skin, to ground me in the moment. The bond flared between us, and for the first time, I let it. I let it expand, let it breathe, let it become something more than just a weight around my throat. Magic coiled at my fingertips. Damon's wolf stirred beneath his skin. And as the eclipse reached its peak, we stepped forward together. The world exploded. One second we stood on the battlefield, the next, magic detonated in the clearing like a breaking storm. Wolves rushed from the shadows, tearing into Ravena's forces as spells lashed across the night. The scent of earth and blood and fire filled my lungs, the ground shaking beneath my feet. Damon shifted in an instant. One second a man, the next a towering midnight thack wolf, teeth bared, eyes glowing feral blue. And me? I didn't hesitate. I threw out my hands and power answered. The pendant at my throat blazed, the glow surging down my arms, turning my veins into threads of silver light. A pulse of energy exploded from my core, sending 2 of Ravena's soldiers flying backward before they could reach me. Okay, that was new. I didn't have time to process it, because Ravenna was already moving. She lifted a hand, and the shadows themselves twisted and lunged, aiming straight for Damon. I didn't think. I reacted. A burst of light shot from my palm, slamming into the darkness, dispersing it before it reached him. Ravenna's eyes narrowed. "Oh," she murmured, tilting her head. "So you've finally woken up." I rolled my shoulders, electricity humming beneath my skin. "You have no idea." She lunged. I met her halfway. Magic clashed, colliding in a brilliant, chaotic mess of silver and black. My heart slammed against my ribs as I dodged a spell meant to turn my bones to dust, retaliating with a slash of energy that sliced through her gown, barely missing flesh. We fought, magic crackling, the battlefield chaos incarnate around us. Damon's will form a blur of lethal motion, gripped through enemy ranks, all teeth and fury. But my attention was locked on her, because she wasn't just fighting, she was playing. "You're strong," Ravenna mused, dodging another blast of power, her own magic curling through the air like smoke. "But not enough." A trap. I saw it too late. She moved faster than I thought possible, her magic slamming into my chest like a wrecking ball, sending me flying. I hit the ground hard, my vision sparking white. Damon snarled, wheeling toward me, but the betrayal happened before he could reach me. A figure, one of our own, moved in the chaos, turning on us. A blade flashed. Damon howled in pain. "No!" I scrambled to my feet, blood roaring in my ears. Damon staggered, his wolf form faltering, silver fire burning where the blade had cut into him. Ravenna smiled. My hands shook. I didn't think. I let the bond ignite. Magic poured from me, the pendant flaring blindingly bright, and the ground cracked beneath my feet. Ravenna's smile vanished. Because, for the first time, she wasn't in control anymore. I lifted my hands, power building, and I let go. The battlefield erupted in silver light, and the world broke apart. Chapter 10. Dawn of a New Order. The forest smelled like ash and morning dew, a strange combination, one that spoke of what had been destroyed and what could now begin. I stood in the clearing where, just hours ago, the world had come apart at the seams. The ground was still scarred, marked by the raw magic that had exploded from me. But the air? The air was light now. Clear. Hopeful. The sun rose slowly, its golden fingers stretching across the battlefield, filtering through the trees as if they, too, were exhaling in relief. I let out a breath, my fingers aching as I flexed them. I was sore, exhausted, and pretty sure I had bruises in places I didn't even know could bruise. But I was alive. We all were. Damon moved beside me, his presence solid and steady, his clothes torn, his face streaked with dried blood and soot. He looked like he'd been through hell, which, to be fair, we had. But his eyes were soft. I let out a shaky laugh. "Well, that was dramatic," he huffed. "You're one to talk." Fair, the survivors, wolves and allies alike, began to gather in small clusters, tending to wounds, checking on each other. The bond between them felt stronger now, not fractured, but reforged. And Julian? He stood at the edge of the clearing, still torn between guilt and relief, his shoulders weighted by what he had done and what had been done to him. I met his gaze. He braced himself, probably expecting anger. Instead, I offered a tired, lopsided smile. "You're an idiot." His brows lifted. "Like, a huge idiot?" I continued, crossing my arms. "And I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life, level idiot." Julian exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his hair. "I know," I sighed. "Good." Then, softer. "You were manipulated, Julian. Ravenna played you. It doesn't mean you're beyond redemption." He blinked, like he hadn't expected that, like he didn't think he deserved it. Damon stepped beside me, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "She's right," he said. "You have a lot to make up for." Julian swallowed, nodding once. "I know." I clapped my hands together. "Great, glad we settled that." I turned back to Damon. "Now please tell me there's food somewhere before I pass out dramatically in the dirt." Damon let out a huff of a laugh, shaking his head. The war was over. The wounds would heal, and somehow, against all odds, we had survived. The morning mist clung to the trees as I stood in the clearing near the ancestral estate, sunlight filtering through the leaves in soft golden ribbons. It was quiet here, peaceful, which, honestly, felt weird. After weeks of chaos, my body had apparently forgotten how to exist in silence. I exhaled, rolling my shoulders, letting the weight of everything settle into me. The pendant at my throat was cool against my skin now, no longer surging with wild magic, no longer a thing I fought against. Because I had finally stopped fighting it. This was who I was, not just Avery Morgan, human. Not just the girl who stumbled into a supernatural war, but a bridge, a guardian, and maybe, just maybe, something more. "You look serious." I turned at the sound of Damon's voice. He stood at the edge of the clearing, arms crossed, watching me with that unreadable, intense gaze that I had definitely not thought about too much. I smirked. "I think it's called reflecting on life choices, which, there've been a lot of lately." He snorted, stepping closer. "So? Any regrets?" I thought about it. About the chaos, the fear, the complete and utter upheaval of my life. Then I thought about him, about the bond between us, no longer a thing I resented, but something I had chosen. Something that had chosen me, too. I looked at him, feeling the answer settle deep in my bones. "No." Damon watched me, his blue eyes flickering in the sunlight, something soft and unspoken passing between us. "Good," he said quietly. We stood there for a moment, the weight of everything we had survived stretching between us, and then, because I was me, I broke the silence with, "So does this mean I get a cool new title, like Official Werewolf Diplomat Extraordinaire?" Damon groaned, dragging a hand down his face. "You're impossible." "Exactly," I grinned, "and now you're stuck with me." Damon didn't argue. He just smirked, shaking his head, before stepping closer. Just close enough that the bond hummed between us, no longer a force of chaos, but something steady, something real, something ours. I exhaled, my shoulders finally relaxing, my fingers brushing over my pendant one last time. A bridge between two worlds, a guardian of balance, and apparently, a very inconvenient soulmate to one broody werewolf alpha. Not bad for a girl who just wanted a normal life. But normal? Overrated. I glanced up at Damon, flashing him a smirk. So, what now? He tilted his head. Now, a slow, mischievous smile curled at the corner of his lips. Now, we make our own future. Epilogue. A quiet promise. The city hummed around us, soft and alive, full of neon lights and the warm buzz of humanity. But beyond it, just at the edges of its reach, the forest waited. Dark and ancient, filled with the quiet kind of magic that no one really noticed until they stepped too close. I had one foot in both worlds, and for the first time, I wasn't trying to pick a side. Damon walked beside me, our hands intertwined, his thumb brushing against my knuckles absently, like he'd forgotten to stop touching me. Not that I minded. We strolled through the city streets, the smell of coffee and rain-soaked pavement mixing with the distant scent of pine and earth. It shouldn't have worked, the clash of modern life and untamed wilderness, but somehow it did. Somehow we did. Damon glanced over at me. You're quiet. I smirked. I'm reflecting on life choices. His lips twitched. Ah. Again, big decisions were made, I said airily, squeezing his hand. Seemed like a good time for some deep, meaningful brooding, Damon sighed. You've been spending too much time with me. I grinned. Obviously. We reached the edge of the city, where pavement turned to dirt trails, where streetlights gave way to moonlight, where the world became something older. Something that belonged to him, and, as much as I had fought it, something that belonged to me, too. We walked deeper into the trees, the hush of the forest wrapping around us. The air was crisp and full of promise, the sky endless above us, and for once there were no battles to fight, no prophecies to unravel, no curses waiting to ruin my day. Just this. Just us. Damon exhaled, squeezing my hand a little tighter. So, you still think you made the right choice? I looked at him, at the sharp angles of his face softened by the moonlight, at the steady weight of him beside me, at the way he had fought so damn hard to let me choose it all. I smiled. Ask me again in 100 years, Damon chuckled, low and warm. Deal. My pendant, the thing that started it all, the thing that had fought me every step of the way, rested against my chest, its glow soft and steady, no longer an unanswered question, but a quiet, constant truth, a promise, a bridge, a balance. I rested my free hand over it, feeling its pulse beneath my fingertips, and then turned my attention back to the future waiting ahead. No fate, no prophecy, just a choice we made together, and it was only the beginning.